Now back to Willard and Dibs. Take it away, Mark.
All right, Steph. I might just do that. I didn't know that. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it right here on Yahoo Sports. From hello again, friends, to goodbye, friends. Jim Nance calling his final NCAA Final Four basketball game.
Last shining moment.
So long, friends.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, he started in 1986.
He's doing exactly what, the year that I always tell you about. I think it was 06.
Yeah, I can't wait till tonight.
It's my favorite sports trip I've ever taken, where for work we went to the Final Four and did shows. And as soon as the Final Four was over, I took some vacation. By the way, this is funny. I don't know why.
I was there for that Final Four.
I don't know why Nahigian and I have never dealt with this before.
Yeah?
You know that Nahigian was my boss in a former life also. Different market, different network, different everything.
Look.
Right? And now that I think back to it, he was the one. I tried to take vacation after the Final Four, and he's like, look, you're our golf guy. We can't have you take vacation during the Masters.
Yeah.
We need you on during the Masters. I'm like, but I'm taking vacation to go to the Masters.
Ah, how funny.
My friend is in the Masters.
Yeah.
So I need to go to the Masters, and I need we ended up striking a deal where the network had some double eagle club across the street deal where I could walk, because you can't bring your phone out there. I'm like, I'll do reports for you from the Masters. He's like, can't have your phone out there at the Masters. So I had to leave the course twice a day to go across the street to this club to do call-ins.
Man.
And so we struck a deal that I would take vacation but still work. By the way, I did have to use vacation in order to do it.
That's awkward.
Total BS. But
one time I went to the Masters, I went from the Final Four in Indianapolis. I think you and I were hanging out.
Yep, to the
down
Masters.
And I had to do a couple of days of radio in downtown Atlanta.
Oh, so good. See, I flew into Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, I flew to Atlanta.
I flew to Savannah.
My brother flew in. I picked him up, and we drove down to hello, friends.
But that's what Jim Nance has been doing every year of his life, which is call the one shining moment
too.
And then get his butt down to Augusta. Let's get our butt out to our guest line. And the great Anthony Slater, our Warrior insider, joining us now. By the way, I promised to let you know what's going on with the Giants. Mike Yastrzemski is going to join us here in a little bit. Within the next half hour or so, after the team bus gets back to the hotel, Yaz, one of the 7 home runs today for the Giants,
Yaz,
is going to be on the show with us. So looking forward to that. But let's hang with Slater a little bit here, especially with the Wiggins news. Hey, Anthony, how you doing?
7 home runs for the Giants today. Gee.
I mean, right?
Your boys in hog heaven over here.
Trying to tell you, these guys can hit, man. I can tell you. They can hit.
Yeah, I mean, that's breaking news to me. I mean, some teams don't have 7 home runs this season.
Yeah. Some teams also haven't been shut out twice in the first 4 games, too, but that's a different story. But, hey, let's talk about Andrew Wiggins. First of all, to what level did you see this coming over the last handful of days?
I would say the last couple of weeks there's been increased hinting behind the scenes of he could, don't rule it out, but also he hadn't shown yet. So you got a sense that they were not closing the door, and there was a reason they weren't closing the door. And I'd say over the last week or so, this clearly has, somewhat been kind of targeted this week, but it's still kind of, we're waiting for it to become a little bit more official, and it seems it will be, and the plan is for him to show up in the next 24 hours and attend the game tomorrow night, not necessarily play in it.
Which would be big, and I'm sure the ovation if he comes out. And I was saying this to Mark about Friday. It would be cool if he kind of came out midway through the first quarter and word got out that there he is and the crowd can give him the ovation that he deserves. But in terms of ramp up, how much do you think that he's going to need in terms of being able to be out there on the floor before he's actually able to be back to the two-way Wiggs we all know?
They don't know, because Rick Celebrini makes those decisions, like when guys are greenlit to play again. And Rick Celebrini hasn't been around them for, at this point, 48, 49 days. Now he's told them that he's been in Minneapolis, he's been working out with a trainer, but that's not an NBA game. I mean, that's not a pennant race type atmosphere. So I think he needs to get a couple workouts in, let Rick Celebrini see where he is. That's checkpoint number 1, just physically where's he at. And then they'll probably come up with a ramp-up plan that, comes from a very cautious approach of Rick Celebrini. I mean, you guys follow the team. He's generally on the cautious side. So I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see him this week. If they do get the 6th seed or the 5th seed, if they just stay out of the play-in, then they actually have a very, nice buffer before the playoffs. You guys remember last year Steph missed the last, 22 games, something like that, after he sprained his foot. But they got him back in those big-time practices right before the playoffs. Those are like training camp-style practices because you have 5 days off. And then he played game 1 of the playoffs after a long absence. Maybe it trends that way, but again, they're not going to know till they kind of get their hands on him. And he hasn't been in the facility in more than a month. So they'll know more in the next 48 hours.
Anthony Slater with us here, our Warrior Insider, Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Anthony, less basketball side, more emotional side. What do you think this does for the locker room?
I think it injects some belief that, a title run, as ambitious or unrealistic even at times as it seemed over the last several months, the pieces are at least coming together where it's not out of the question. If there's no Andrew Wiggins in the playoffs, I'm sure Steph Curry, Draymond would still believe they had a puncher's chance. But, as an unbiased observer, I think we all know, like, if your two-way wing that was so awesome in the playoffs last season is not there, I didn't think they had a chance in the West. The fact that he's going to show up, at least I think a glimmer of hope is there, and that usually injects the locker room with some life. Also, just seeing Andrew Wiggins, he's a very well-liked figure over the last couple of years since he's joined the franchise. So it should help, but at the same time, I'm also skeptical the version of Andrew Wiggins we saw last April is going to show up, because, I mean, even before he just left for 50 days, he wasn't having that great of a season. He had the groin injury. He had, he looked rusty when he came back. He got sick a couple times. Like, he was already out of rhythm. He really hasn't been in a rhythm since, December.
Yeah, and he's only played, I'm just looking at it now, 15 games since December 3rd when he played his last game against Houston before he dipped out. And if he comes back in mid-April, it'll be 2 months while he was gone. Mark and I were having a little bit of a friendly debate, always friendly here from 2 to 6, always. Anthony, about the bench strength. Which bench do you think shapes up to be better, last year's championship bench or this year's bench?
I think last year's was more of a sure thing. I think Gary Payton was in a better, physical place. We'll see with, Gary, maybe, he materializes back into what he used to be. But Otto Porter and Nemanja Bjelica, even in small doses in the playoffs, gave them, to me, more size and defensive acumen, while allowing them to, kind of go small and space the floor a little bit more. But the way Porter rebounded as a stretch four is different than they don't have that on the roster this year. And, the youth hasn't blossomed as much. Now, Kuminga is showing some signs of life lately, but I want to see him in a playoff setting. He's a little bit harder to fit into lineups. So, DiVincenzo's been really solid, but he's been starting, with Wiggins out. So, last year's bench proved it. I think Poole was the best version of himself during last year's playoffs. He's shown glimpses of that lately. But I would take last year's just because they showed it. This year's, it's been so kind of hit and miss.
Hey, Anthony, was Steve Kerr mad last night? He used the word mindless 3 times in one sound clip. This one bug him a little bit more than some of the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, for 2 reasons. Number one, I mean, it's the type of mistakes he made are the ones that have been angering him all season, where, he mentioned the word mindless, but just, bad, kind of ill-advised, brain-dead turnovers, which I thought was kind of really the result. But the other thing is, if they had a chance to create some separation and really, ease into this final week in the driver's seat for either the 5th or 6th seed, they just drag themselves back into danger. They don't control their own destiny. If the Lakers went out, Lakers at 5th seed, they're ahead of the Warriors, which is crazy considering where the Lakers were a month ago. But it was just a bad loss at a bad time when you felt like they were maybe ready to trampoline themselves towards the playoffs. Just kind of brought them back down to earth. He is a competitive, fiery guy, and I think you saw a little of that last night.
So if the Warriors can win out, which would be a nice win over Oklahoma City, it's predictable that they get that. Sacramento may be shutting it down, and then Portland, who knows about the Blazers at this point. If the Warriors do win out, they're guaranteed at least a 6, right?
Not necessarily, because the Pelicans can go 4-0 and they'd have the same record, and I believe the Pelicans right now are one game better from a conference record standpoint. So let's say the Pelicans and Lakers went out. I believe Pelicans and Lakers would probably be 5-6 with the Warriors at 7. Now, it's kind of an unrealistic scenario. You think the Pelicans probably have a loss ahead of them. The Lakers facing the Clippers is a big game, but no, I do not believe the Warriors control their own destiny at this point.
Anthony Slater with us, Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Hey, Anthony, just because you've been doing such a good job covering both teams, and we're watching the full-level Mike Brown reverse psychology game has begun after they lost to the Spurs yesterday, and he's starting to be critical of his team in a public space. What do you think would happen if that matchup comes to pass?
Well, the Kings are not playing that well right now. I went to their supposed clinching playoff game when they lost to the Wolves without Towns, and some of their worst habits are showing up. They have no rim protection. They have some youth on the roster, obviously inexperienced. They lost the other day to the Spurs. I mean, their defense gave up like 140 something to a San Antonio team that had like Malachi Branham basically was like their top scorer. So they don't appear as sharp as they did, but they're going to score. They're going to score well. They're going to play really fast. I think they're going to, hit the Warriors in some pressure points that their defense hasn't been capable of guarding. I think, you're going to need Andrew Wiggins and a healthy Gary Payton II to contain Fox and Herter and some of the dribble handoffs with Sabonis. I think you need to go small with Draymond a lot in that series. I can't imagine what the stat will be going into the series of like playoff games played on both sides, how lopsided that'll be. And that'll probably make Vegas peg the Warriors as the favorite, but it's dangerous, and that's a dangerous place to play. And the Kings have been the best team in the conference on the road, so that, their style has traveled this year. It would be very interesting. But I wouldn't call it a gimme either way. I think it would be a competitive series.
You are listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on Twitch, YouTube, and the free Odyssey app.
Anthony, assuming that the Warriors are able to get Andrew Wiggins back and they're fully healthy coming up here in 10 or 12 days to start the playoff push, what's the one team that could be the most daunting in their way?
Oh, man, I think you saw the Nuggets last night without Jokic, kind of showing off to anybody that was watching how much better their supporting cast is around Jokic than it has been. Jamal Murray is starting to get further away from his return and look sharper, like the bubble Jamal Murray, you might say. Michael Porter Jr., I'm not a huge believer in him, especially in a playoff atmosphere, but, man, the guy can get hot on any random night and shoot you to a win. Aaron Gordon, I think, learned a lot from that playoff series last season, and he's just playing like a tougher brand. And then they added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown. Those are playoff players. They're versatile. They play both sides of the ball. They can hit an open three. I think Denver's being slept on because what they haven't been able to do in the previous season's playoffs, people kind of are in wait-and-see mode, which is understandable. But to me, this is just a much better supporting cast than Jokic has ever had. There's a reason they've been the one seed in the West basically all season. I would pick them as the toughest matchup.
Anthony, I'll ask it to you this way. I don't know what seed they're going to be playing. Who knows what's going on. But when the playoffs start, let's assume the Warriors are in it, you expect them to look like a different team or not?
I think, different on the road would be like the big question, right? They've looked like a title contender at home. I do think that the stage raises their just like focus level and mental approach. Their coaching staff, the Steve Kerr coaching staff, has always shown to be really sharp in series adjustments. He's been great at that over his time. And then you're going to get, if you escape the play-in, you get like 5 or 6 off days before game one. And then usually in the first round, you get 1, often 2 off days before every game. That, I think, benefits an older team, a creakier team at times. You could expect a fresher Klay Thompson more, regularly, a fresher Draymond Green. So I think that plays well for them, but I also think a lot of the flaws they've shown all season, like, they still exist. They're extremely small. They're turnover prone. They can have bad shooting nights, and I don't love them defensively as much as I did last season. So I wouldn't call them the favorite in the West, but I don't like the West isn't that good, so I'm a little wishy-washy.
You could pick your opponent not based on how the Warriors could advance, but based on where Anthony Slater wants to spend his off day on the road. What's your opponent?
Oh, man, can they play the Miami Heat in the first round?
I'll see if I can petition the commish.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I wouldn't mind Kings for the proximity. I wouldn't mind Phoenix at some point, or even in the first round because I like Phoenix. And then just like last year was such a bear. You know, you had Memphis and Dallas as part of the West playoffs. Boston, which I like the city of Boston, which is so far away. That was like kind of a grueling path where this year, if you do, you know, maybe you get a Clippers, maybe you get Kings, maybe you get Phoenix. That's not that bad. I like the setup of that because at this point, I'm getting a little bit older. I just like a little bit of like a lack of travel miles. That's the big thing.
Man, those mid-30s can sneak up on you, Slates.
Gosh, the grueling nature of travel for somebody who does nothing physically when they get there. I'm just saying, Anthony.
Hey, year 10 covering the league, 41 road games, or really when you have the playoffs, like 50 a year. We're talking about like 500 road games.
Man.
They get to you. I'll tell you that.
I have seen no gray in that beard, Anthony. No. I see none.
You look a little closer next time because I've been seeing some gray in the goatee area of the beard lately, and it's scaring me a little bit. Maybe that's why I just want a low travel playoff.
I mean, as long as you're inviting me, I thought that would have been weird if I just walked up to you and got like right up in your beard. I thought, without even saying hello, that would have been weird.
The problem is you can probably see it from about 6 feet away now.
Well,
wow.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, social distancing next time we see you. There it is. Anthony, thanks, brother.
All right, fellas.
Okay, there it is. Slates. Right here on Willard and Dibs. Yeah.